to go okay. I mean,
we hope so.
Did go wrong?
Famous last words. Hi, everybody. Good.
I mean, we have. I was saying that I was so. Wait, in fact, good evening, everybody. I think if your things are going ding, so that means that we are live.
It's amazing how many notifications I get on my phone when we go live. It's like, hey, are you sure you want to do this? Like, I don't know. It happened while I was out on vacation because we had scheduled that EHF coverage to go out. And I was like, oh, what is, that's right. You know, it took me a minute to go, okay.
What have I not done?
It's like, who has the keys to the account?
Yes. Who's driving the bus?
Did we get hacked? Or is
this
that just...
evening has been a frantic evening because I've been out today a meeting of our local engineering forum, of which I hadn't been. I was meant to give a lecture a couple of months ago. That's about where I got COVID.
Right.
And I had to sleep in this room I'm in now. Well, I was meant to be in the next sort of town over giving a lecture on human factors and human factors in engineering, and I had to cancel because I had COVID. And so this was the first real meeting I'd had with them since I'd had that. And then I've also now been made president-elect because they were trying to, I think, they were trying to encourage me to become the next chairman of the group for next year. You know, I was like, I'm really sorry, but I can't. I've got a note from my Chartered Institute people that says that I've got to be 100% focused on them for at least 12 to 18 months. Like, okay.
Well, there's always years in the future, right?
Well, I pulled a blinder tonight because we went along and they were looking for somebody to the current vice chair had to step down, so somebody else had to come in and step in. So you know that awkward bit where you look around the room going, right, so who would like to step up to be vice chair?
Do this? Yeah.
Because whoever is vice chair is then chair the following year, right? Because it's a step up. So because both me and Amanda, my wife, we both sit on this committee now. And anyway, this other gentleman basically was encouraged to do it, so he's doing that. And then, we should really think about the following year as well, so we've got good transition. And they all turned around and said, "Oh, Barry, you could do it." I said, "Unfortunately, I will still be in my past president year. I will no doubt be hugely busy. I've heard that it's not that busy, but anyway, I'll be very busy." But Amanda would love to do it, wouldn't you, Amanda? If looks could kill. Anyway, she's going to be the vice president next year, and president the year after.
There you go.
The year after. I'm so sleeping on the sofa tonight.
Oh boy.
I think it's one of these things that she's. I think she'll be quite nervous about, but actually she's very, very competent. So.
So Barry, just so you're aware, I've made an editorial decision with the show notes. I have elected to put the experiments out of the blurb and in their own section. We can talk about them, and that way we can kind of keep the blurb a little shorter. And you know, we talk about sort of the observations made from those experiments, but then we can talk about. Yeah. I think that'll shorten it up quite significantly, and then I think that's good, and we can talk about the experiments here. Tonight, everyone, we're talking about AI ethical decisions. Are we ready as a society for AI to make those ethical decisions for us? No.
That was the shortest podcast ever.
Yeah. All right. See you next week for another episode of One Answer Podcast. That would be a funny.
We've taken Human Factors Minute to a whole new level.
Human Factors Second.
Yeah.
The question is the show title, and we either just say yes or no.
Yes or no. There's maybe something in that. I mean, not, but maybe is there a whole bunch of questions that, you know, like when we did the end of year one and we basically read through all the titles and all that stuff. Could we do something similar that is the title of the shows, but the answer, and then all we get is you're allowed one liner on
Huh.
So we're basically reflecting back on the year's worth of things, because at the time we might have thought it was amazing, but actually now we realize it's rubbish. Almost like either a one word or a one line. You're only allowed like a one sentence response.
Well, if you think about it, right, there's 52 weeks in a year, so we'd have to do at least 52 of them, or at most 52 of them. I guess we technically do.
Because you do 20, we do 26, because we split it over 2, don't we? So that's 26. So it could be as simple as like tonight's title. Research study, society's ready for ethical decision making. No,
Right.
we're not. Next.
Yeah, nope. No.
And just almost a sarcastic response to every single title that we could alternate on. I think that might be an interesting. Well, I find it interesting. I don't know whether anybody else will.
Let me just do a quick preview or review, I guess, of some of our episodes here.
See if it would work.
And see if it would work, right? I mean, most of our shows are phrased as questions, although we've kind of gotten away from that in recent, right? So, TRB's new tool for airport construction safety and phasing plans.
It's great.
Right. Like, it would be like a quick thought on that one, right?
Yeah.
Let's kiss in VR.
That's not.
That's not a question. It's a statement. Yeah. It's a command. Human-robot interaction will change the food industry. Yes, it will. I mean, will. That's like, yeah, if we give our like just generic thoughts on it, I think it could work, right? Yeah. Fixing humanity's broken risk perception to save the planet. I mean, really what we're asking for here is kind of like a TLDR version of the podcast
Yes. Yeah, in fact, that's... Yes, because rather than just reading out the titles, it actually gives us a little bit of nuance, or just complete and utter sort of joking around about it.
Mm-hmm.
Both would work.
I see you're filling out some stuff too here.
Yeah.
So.
Did you see and actually it might fit into this as well, the study that the American transportation people did around the Tesla accidents. So,
yeah,
and you sort of sitting there going, "No, Tesla's by far the worst." It's like, yeah, but Tesla's by far the most prevalent as well. So they hadn't weighted it at all in terms of how many Tesla's share of the market, and then the entire share of AI, that type of vehicle over gas vehicles, petrol vehicles.
It keeps overwriting your stuff. I think it's because it's a table. Sorry.
Oh, it might be because I'm in the same.
Yeah, let's see here. It's still doing the same thing. With this. Yeah, I mean, wait. If you're joining us tonight, would you
write our show notes for us?
Write our show notes for us. Do our job. No, would you type in the chat, please, whether or not you would let an artificially intelligent agent make a decision around ethics. We'll leave it vague, but like, I guess the question is, would you trust an AI to do like the trolley problem, right? And for everyone's awareness, the trolley problem is kind of like I don't know. It's a mind experiment where, would you let a trolley go on one path that had a certain number of lives on that track, and then or another path with another certain number of lives on the track, and then you also have to consider who's on the trolley itself. Ideally, AI would assign values to the lives of these individuals, taking into account factors like age, experience, contributions to society.
They used the trolley experiment in this, didn't they?
I think
yesterday. That was one of the, and because one of my comments on here, I think, yes, it is the value of culture, because there's some really interesting bits of research around that between East and Western culture, when we talk about the old and young and how we assign value and how they assign value. It's quite cool.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I can't think of the reference off the top of my head, but I'll just wing it. Social. You got it came from.
Let's see here.
One more thing.
Ooh. Oh yeah, you got one of those.
Yeah,
I got. Okay. I in true Barry fashion have multiple. I could talk about any.
Whoa! This is not true, bro. I have two.
Okay, look, I said I have multiple. Two is multiple.
Yeah, two is two. Three is multiple.
We just need to start calling it
three more things.
Three more things.
one more thing.
One more thing.
That reminds me. Apparently, I've got a Thursday when I'm going on holiday. I mean,
that's right. When is that happening? Because I need to figure out what's going on there.
Me too. It's not then. It's then. Oh, it is. Right. It's going to be the 28th of July.
Okay, you've given me about a month's notice. That's great.
There's more notice than I know.
July 28th. I mean, we might be able to record something ahead of time.
So you could either do a pre-record.
Could.
Because technically, could you do it? I don't know whether this works for you, but say Monday the 25th. I don't think we're going to the Tuesday, or the week before, or something like that. Or we could do a post-show thing like we've done in the past, or whatever works.
Whoa. Hold the phone here. Yes, we'll figure that out. But I have breaking news.
Oh, go for it.
It appears our broadcasting software has now implemented tickers. And so we can do fun tickers at the bottom of our down here, like an actual news thing.
Whoa!
Right, and I've taken our favorite news story.
Yeah, I was going to say that was okay.
So check that out. Now, what we could do is, we could. I mean, we could put some real cool things down there. I'm.
That's quite cool.
So hang on. Let's.
That you're gonna have to move the logo a little bit higher.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll figure out the logo thing, but hang on. I'm thinking we have 1,000 characters to mess around with.
Whoa.
So that's quite a lot, right? So we could do this, right? Hey, Pride updates, designing for look at that.
That's cool.
I don't like the speed in which it goes. I think it's a little fast.
That's where you need to only use about, say, 200 characters, but you have it on loop because you need to have a short.
I'm wondering if there's a way to adjust that, but that's really cool, right? Check that out.
That's cool.
That's very cool. I like it. We'll maybe figure that out.
It is actually, that would be, how we've sort of talked around whether people actually listen to the programming notes and things like that.
Yeah.
So if you put the abbreviated programming notes on there, we'll still read through them, but so then the people who are doing this through their visual platform of choice still get the programming notes.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
It's one more element that I'd have to adjust for in post, which is not making me happy, but because we do translate, I guess, our content to a
I see. Yeah, when you do that
vertical, and so then it wouldn't be a huge thing because it's static and it stays in the same place, and really, it would just be half the length. I mean, it's not a huge deal. It's just one more thing that I had to worry about.
Which you don't need. So why don't we? Let's not rush into this.
Let's think about it.
Oh, why don't you use AI to make a decision as to whether you should do it? By the way, your mum wouldn't allow AI to make ethical decisions. Linda says
I don't think she would.
Which she says not. Very, very shouty and very shouty letters.
All caps.
Yeah.
This is Mom. Your caps lock key is on.
I think she just really means it.
All right. So, let's think of a couple extra show notes here. I want to make sure that we pad this out quite nicely since either of us didn't really have a good opportunity to sit down before this.
I literally got in like 2 minutes before. But it didn't help because I sort of we left the place, which is about 45 minutes away at 9 o'clock. So yeah, there was some. I might not have stuck to the speed limit all the way. So we had to then pick up a McDonald's because otherwise I haven't eaten yet. I hadn't eaten. So I was like, I need some food, otherwise I'm just going to fall over. So we stuck to McDonald's. They then did the thing. Normally drive-through works really, really well, except for this time. So all I asked for was quarter pounder, nothing really dramatic. And they're like, oh, could you just go and wait in the bay and we'll be right out, which means we're going to take about 20 minutes. I was laughing and fretting. But anyway, they brought that out. So we then made it here. Got in here and I've been having some electrical work done on the house. And I hadn't realised that the power had tripped in here in my work cabin, and so as I sat down I was like, why is there nothing work? Because I assumed actually it'll be okay because the laptop's on, everything is kind of there. I just need to bring up the notes and I'm good to go. So I've had to reboot everything from the ground up, and that was stressing me out as well. But anyway, show notes.
Yeah, that's a thing that we're doing.
Oh, sorry. No, back to what shipping labels are you making? I was working making shipping labels. Right. In fact, I want to move that one out. Yeah. All the time. Perfect.
Here's this there. Oh boy, there's some real good ones in here. Oh boy. I can almost take this bullet point verbatim and put it there. I think this is going to be a good, especially when we start breaking it down by domain. I think there's going to be some real fun conversations, fun and or hard conversations here to have. Forensics.
Yeah.
Hey, everyone listening. How interested would you all be in a forensic human factors podcast? Just a thought. Let's see. Oh, forensics. Yeah. So,
that needs to. That's not the right place. This is. Well.
Oh yeah, sir. Oh yeah. Oh dude, this is okay. I'm really excited now.
Yeah, but right. So there's a problem here. If you get too excited and think it's going to be great, then that's where we might struggle because we've done other ones where we've turned around and said this is going to be really difficult, really hard, and I've thoroughly enjoyed them.
Don't worry. I have good news. I told my wife right before this show, or right before we went on, I was like, I don't feel great about this.
Yeah. So now you've now changed your mind.
Well, look, we are putting some interesting points in here.
True.
I feel better.
Good.
Yeah. It's one of those things where I texted you, Barry. I said, hey, Barry. Or you texted me actually and said, hey, I can't get in until 30 minutes before, and I said, oh, that's great, I have plenty of time. Wouldn't you know that my schedule completely got busy in between. I was like, oh yeah, no, I'll get in there, make all the show notes. It'll be fine. It'll be great. And then here we are, just frantically typing away. 10 minutes before we go on to make a great show for you all. I think it will be. There's some. I don't think it's going to go one way or another, Barry. I think we have some great topics and some great jumping off points here. It could go either way. How about that? We'll see what happens when we say it can go either way. Because you're right. When we do say it's a good episode, it kind of maybe, and then sometimes the opposite is true. We'll see.
I don't think we've ever done a bad episode. I just think some are better than others.
Yes, I would agree with that statement. Although, you know what? Go back and listen to the first episode. That's a little hard to listen to.
It's and I should really go back and listen to my first episode with you, because I know that I was really, really nervous about that one. But I think we have the difference between good episodes and great episodes, rather than good and bad.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Not a problem. All right, let's see here. There's got to be some more. I mean, yeah, there's definitely some more cultural things that we can touch on. I mean, it's the way in which we do these is there's a lot of overlap. So it's.
There is. I mean, I think doing what we did the other day as well worked really well when we, if you think you need to jump to something else that isn't in the order, you just reorder it on the fly. That worked out really nicely.
I'm not so much going to reorder since we only have 5 categories. I'll just jump to it, and then we can kind of just highlight wherever we left off. And
yeah. Whatever works.
Yeah.
I'm tired. Don't want to feel tired.
I don't want you to feel tired either.
Don't do that. No, we don't do that.
Struggling.
Oh! What have you either done or not done or should have done or could have done? And he said we're going to find out about it.
Yeah.
So,
I feel really stupid.
I'm not going to answer that one.
Thanks, Barry. So look, let me just you know what? I'm going to go in the order of operations in which I notice these things, because I will take you on the journey with me. We got a couple minutes before the show starts. I'm feeling good about the show notes, and we're good there.
Yeah.
Let me talk you through something. This is going to be my one more thing, but since I just realized this before the show, it's not going to be my one more thing. If anyone has been keeping up with the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, you've noticed there's been a new wonderful little droid called Lola. And I have purchased some 3D files, and I've been working very diligently on my version of Lola. And here my Lola is, and you can see she has a wonderful green and orange color scheme. Okay, this is not the color scheme in the show. I just like this color scheme because it kind of screamed smuggler to me, and I was like, oh, those are kind of smugglery colors. You got kind of the like earthy green with the like rebel orange, right? So I mean, I really liked these colors, this combination, and you can actually see, there's another test piece I had here with a couple other options. So you can see there's kind of two different tones of green there, 2 different tones of orange. And ultimately I went with, this green here and this orange over here. Anyway, green and orange. I those weren't the initial colors I was going to go for. I was going to go for like a green and yellow, but that kind of felt too Boba Fett to me.
Okay.
I knew I liked that kind of mossy green. Okay. In the mail the other day, I hate this. In the mail the other day, I received my most recent issue of Human Factors, the Journal of the Human Factors and Ergonomic Society. Now people are gonna think I'm doing it because of human.
Is that? Do they change their cover presumably every time? So therefore, that's just a one-off, or is that like the cover that they use every single time? I hope it's just a one-off. If it is, you can get away with it. If not, you've been.
Well, here are the previous 2 issues.
You got a human fact destroyed. You got a human fact destroyed.
Oh my god! I can't escape. I can't. I'm so mad. I'm so mad, and they almost match perfectly too. Like, hang on, let's do a side-by-side comparison. Okay, here's the green. Okay,
That's
there's the green.
The bit that you got silver with the what looks like an island. If you painted that black, it'd be perfect.
Well, so here's the thing: is the detail lines. You can't. You may or may not be able to see this on camera, but there are detail lines in there that are going to be painted black. And the inner detail of the eye there is black. Like, I'm so mad.
I'm gonna say though, I'm surprised that an organization that produces that is actually keeps with the same cover time after time after time. If you look at ours in the,
it has changed. I will say it has changed over the years. I mean, it used to be like red. It used to be like a red across the top, like a red banner.
Oh, see, we. Economist magazine has its proper almost magazine style where the front changes every single time, and so it's
You know what?
I'm not trying to say mine's better than yours, but mine's better than yours.
You know what?
Go.
I have something to talk about at the as an opener to the HFES town hall.
Yes,
I'm not upset about it.
That works.
You can say, hey, look, I made this. Do those colors look familiar to you?
That's a good test, because if they turn around and say no, why? It just proves they don't read their own literature.
There you go.
That'd be harsh for me.
God. I'm so mad. I really like this color scheme too.
Well,
I got a whole repaint.
So you've been subliminally influenced. That's why.
God.
When is the actually just for people to chat about? When is the town hall? Oh, you got it in the program.
I got it in the programming notes. We'll talk about it in just a second. Anything else we need to cover before we go live here? I guess we're live. We're here. Hi, everybody. We're here.
Yeah.
But before we actually do the show, I mean,
I've just been busted. Oh, so Martin Thody has just commented. So Martin is somebody I used to work with and is a good friend. He's disappointed that I don't have an ergonomist to hand.
Ooh.
That's me. Well, my excuse is that it's in the house. Because I was reading it diligently. But we do have 2 in the house, and I could have had one up here. There's one in my back.
You know what? I just had a great idea. Like, as we get these,
good evening, Martin.
We could do a pre-show, post-show type of thing where we look at this and be like, all right, let's see if there's anything fun and interesting in here. Maximizing the benefits of participatory design for human-robot interaction research with older adults.
Well, because we have a weekly publication.
Oh,
called Think, and so we could use them as a bit of a spring, because I think that is publicly available. If I could find where my latest episode of Think is, I'm just there we go. No, it's right at the top of my thing. So in the news this week, we have talking about Ready to Recycle. Could a system of shared self-driving bikes that move themselves to where they most needed get around cities more efficiently? Things like that. So we could use. In fact, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5 things we could use. We could talk about that in the post show. Martin, I hope that makes it a bit slightly. I promoted Think instead of just the ergonomist. That might get me back in the good books again.
All right.
Might not as well, but you never know. Let's put that over there so I don't forget it.
All right, we're going to. You ready?
Born ready. Except I realize I haven't changed my shirt either, but never mind. We'll just
love that attitude. We're gonna we're going to play this little intro thing, and then we're going to actually do a podcast here, so stick around with us. We'll be right back.
Welcome to Human Factors Cast, your weekly podcast for human factors, psychology, and design.
Hi, I'm feeling better, and I hope you are too. It's episode 248. We're recording this live on June 16th, 2022. This is Human Factors Cast. I'm your host, Nick Roome, joined today by Mr. Barry Kirby.
Hello.
Hello. Tonight on the show, we got some fun stuff for you. We're talking about a new study on society's readiness for AI ethical decision making. What does that mean? And we'll figure it out. Later, we're going to be answering some questions from the community about how to deal with know-it-alls, what to do in a horrible interview experience, and we'll discuss the merits of search engine optimization being user research. But first, we got some programming notes and a community update for y'all. If you're unaware, this is Pride Month, and we are in full steam with our Pride content over here. Shame on me, I don't have my merch, but we are still doing a fundraiser for you all, or for the LGBTQIAP plus community. If you become a patron this month, or if you buy our merch, any of those proceeds from the merch and 30% of our Patreon earnings will go towards the Trevor Project. We talked about it last week on the show. That is still going. Link to our Pride content is in the show notes. This week, you can hear, I guess it's out there now, our Human Factors Minute on designing for LGBTQIAP+. And that is guest read by Katie Sabo, one of our digital media lab. I guess she's like the founding member of our digital media lab research assistants. Also, next Friday, June 29th, 10 a.m. Pacific, join us live on LinkedIn. We're going to be doing another one of those wonderful HFES presidential town halls. We're going to sit down with Chris Reed, who I understand Barry just had to sit down with. We'll also have Carolyn Summerick and Tom Albin, and then friend of the show, Farzan Sasim Gohar. He's been on a couple times. So we'll have a wonderful cast of folks there to talk about HFES, the state of things. It'll be a great time. Barry, I want to know what's going on over at 1202.
Well, Chris Reed clearly gets around everywhere because the interview with him is still up and actually getting some really good traction, particularly some really good feedback here from the UK about just nice to hear what goes on across the pond in HFES and some of the similarities and differences. But coming up on Monday is another new interview, and actually we're diving into health this time. So Peter Brennan, who's a surgeon here in the UK, he's been really driving human factors in his surgery and his operating theatre, and been doing a lot of stuff kind of off his own back. And so it was really good to just chat to him about what his drive is. So that goes live on Monday, and I thoroughly recommend everybody goes and has a listen to it.
Yeah, I finally got a chance to listen to that Chris Reed interview. Great job, Barry. Really appreciate it. All right, we know why you're here. You're here for the news, so why don't we go ahead and get into it? That's right. This is the part of the show where we read you a Human Factors news story, and then we talk about it in some capacity. Barry, what is the news story this week?
So this week, researchers study society's readiness for AI ethical decision-making. So with the accelerating evolution of technology, artificial intelligence plays a growing role in decision-making processes. Humans are becoming increasingly dependent on algorithms to process information, recommend certain behaviors, and even take actions on their behalf. A research team has studied how humans react to the introduction of AI decision-making. Specifically, they explored the question, is society ready for AI ethical decision-making, by studying human interactions with autonomous cars. Researchers observed that when the subjects were asked to evaluate their ethical decisions of either a human or an AI driver, they did not really have a definitive process for either. However, when the subjects were asked about their explicit opinion on whether a driver should be allowed to make ethical decisions on the road, the subjects had a stronger opinion against AI-operated cars. Researchers believe this is the rejection of a new technology that is mostly due to incorporating individuals' belief around society's opinion, and how it's likely to apply to other machine and robots. Therefore, it will be more important to determine how to aggregate individual performances into one social preference. Moreover, this task will also have to be different across countries, as the research here has suggested. So, Nick, are you ready for AI to make ethical decisions in your life?
You know, I saw this question that you posed to me. Are you ready for AI to make ethical decisions in your life? And I said, oh, I can answer this easily. I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I I might be putting too much thought into this, but I genuinely don't know, because what information does an AI agent have about a certain situation that maybe I don't see?
Mm-hmm.
And so I understand the power of AI, and I understand sort of where we're at with that. And AI can do some crazy, scary things and understand things that maybe we can't even see yet. And so, to me, I don't know. That's an interesting question, and I think that's what we're seeing here with this um, story here. Because I mean, a lot of these people probably have that same thought as I do, right? I would imagine, many people kind of understand what AI can do and understand that it can see things more objectively than us humans can do. But because it's such a newer technology, or I guess something that maybe we still don't know all the variables around it, how it makes these decisions, those type of things, maybe that is why they're erring on the side of caution and saying maybe the human should be the one in charge here. But Barry, I'm curious what you think. I'll ask you the same question, since it was such a curveball for me. Are you ready for AI to make ethical decisions in your life?
I don't know. It depends. So I think this is really interesting, because what is good ethical decision making? Because fundamentally, we're now that we'll get into the experiments in a moment, but this is all about asking difficult questions. You're being asked to make choices that invariably lead to a level of hurt, pain, emotional outcome, things that really an AI doesn't understand. Um, they don't. An AI, when it makes a decision, an ethical decision or any sort of decision, doesn't have to live with the outcome. We do, and I think that's where an interesting nuance is. The other thing, I think you kind of alluded to it, which is why I was sort of playing around with the idea, is an AI will presumably know more than we do, or can see all the data almost at face value, more so than what we do. But also, it can presumably, if it has time, it could actually work on different potential outcomes, whereas we react. Now, whether we do that in our head, but if you have to make a split second decision, you make a split second decision with the best information you have available at the time. An AI can presumably process a whole lot, like almost run scenarios almost in the blink of an eye, and therefore make logical decisions based on values, but not necessarily emotional decisions. And again, doesn't have to live with the outcome of what is decided. The decision's made, it does it. So I, as much as I really want to see AI do a lot of stuff, and I think it can help us massively, I still think there is an element there of I'm not sure. That was a long way around it. I don't know.
Yeah, right. So we're both I don't know on that camp, but let's talk a little bit more about sort of what actually happened in this experiment, because I think there's some nuance here that we want to capture in the way in which they sort of analyzed whether or not people were comfortable with AI making these ethical decisions. So let's talk about these experiments, right? There were two of them. I'll kind of talk about the first one, Barry. I'll let you take the second one. In the first experiment, the researchers presented these human subjects with an ethical dilemma, right, that a driver might face. And we can talk about some ethical thought experiments in a little bit through the lens of AI making these decisions, and kind of poke holes at it, see what we would come to in those situations, right? In the specific scenario that these researchers created, the car driver had to decide whether to crash the car into one group of people or another, right? So this is kind of your traditional trolley problem. The collision was completely unavoidable. It had to happen, and the crash would cause severe harm to one group of people, but would save the lives of the other group. Right? Traditional trolley problem. And coming back to sort of the results of the study, right? You mentioned this in the blurb. Basically, when asking to evaluate the ethical decisions of a human versus an AI driver, they kind of they didn't have a preference for either, but then when they were asked whether or not the driver should be allowed to make the decisions on the road, they had sort of a stronger opinion against the AI making that decision. And so in this situation, they said the driver, I guess, should be sort of responsible for determining which of these two groups the car crashes into. Barry, you want to talk about the second experiment here?
Yeah, so the second experiment was a bit broader in terms of understanding how people react to the debate over AI ethical decisions once they become part of the social and political discussions. So they had two scenarios. One involved a hypothetical government that had already decided to allow autonomous cars to make ethical decisions. The other scenario allowed the subjects to vote in whether to allow autonomous cars to make them sort of decisions. And so when they were asked to do this, again, as was sort of mentioned in the blurb, the subjects were really keen that actually they were uncomfortable with it already been made, that they wanted to allow the subjects to vote on what they wanted to play with. So yeah, it's really interesting about how a lot of this comes out. It falls back to why should we as people have the only thing, and is there an element of blame culture here as well? Not culture, but do we just want to be able to point the finger at somebody and not just a thing?
Right.
So yeah, I think there's it's a difficult. I thought this was going to be quite easy. If I'm honest. The more you think about this, and the deeper we get into it, I think it's I've never thought about it quite with this twist on it before.
One thing I do want to bring up about that second experiment that you talked about, right? I think the purpose of that experiment was really to look at sort of how to introduce this concept of having AI make these ethical decisions into a society, right? Is it something that is mandated by the government in charge, or does it allow its citizens to make that decision? And that's really interesting to me as well, because you have sort of this these two schools of thought about how. I mean, theoretically, right? If you're talking about democratic societies, you have sort of these elected officials who are making the decision on your behalf. Or do you let the general populace kind of vote for that as well? Or, even in another case, you have sort of a fascist dictatorial sort of government where the decision is solely made by one ruler, right? And so like there's different ways in which to introduce this into society. It's fascinating to me to see how those might actually be implemented. So Barry, you and I can kind of slice and dice this like we normally do in terms of the all the different facets, but I think I don't know. Do you have a particular one that you want to start with? We can start anywhere. I don't care.
Oh, good. Well,
Yeah.
for me, I think one thing that I find really interesting in all of this, and it kind of does play into that last discussion you just had, is around the organization and social, because for me, the value of culture really hits into this quite strongly, because you take the trolley problem that they've adapted, and the different variations on this are, do you allow it to crash into a bunch of school children, young people, or an elderly person? And different cultures place different values on different people. So Western cultures tend to place more value on young people, because presumably they've got more to live for. They're all out there. Whereas Eastern cultures tend to place a lot more value on elderly people, because they've got so much more experience, and they can they've lived more life, so they've got all this knowledge that they can pass on to people, and improve the wealth of society knowledge base that way. So I think where AI is going to be quite interesting is, how do you implement that in different cultures and in different societies in a way that is right and just, and who is the right person to talk about that? Because then you also then take that next step into, we already have a strong recognition that AI is quite sexist. It's very male, it's very male dominated, because the people who are coding them generally are male, and so it has that inherent bias in it. And so, if we're going to do this, how do we make sure that we, because you don't want to be culturally agnostic, because culture is an inherent part of everybody's fabric. So
Mhm.
how do you make that work? But then how do we make the organization that is developing this type of stuff develop it in such a way that it does reflect, gender bias and them type of attitudes. So I think there is that bigger thing at play, that really I think AI has got a long way to travel in being able to help us solve that.
Yeah, you brought up gender bias. It's not unique to sort of gender either. There's racial bias introduced as well.
Hmm.
AI, the are they gonna person color their skin? It's make an AI more effective, I guess, right? So I don't know. There's a lot there. The sort of next thing that I want to talk about here is, I guess, sort of understanding what the AI's intent is, right? So you have sort of this decision that's being made by an artificial intelligent agent, and when you think about sort of why it that decision or how it made that decision, we as a society, right, we're kind of transferring from that societal aspect now to kind of a training mindset, if you will, right? We will need to be trained. We will need to understand what factors went into that decision, right? Especially when it comes to, I think you mentioned it earlier, hurt, and sort of understanding, if an AI chose my family, somebody else's, ever going to be a new went into that decision. Will I ever do that? I'd be pretty, like, and I think the other person on the other side, that happened to them. And so this need to understand not the of this that it made, but led up to here.
There is definitely elements around that is stuff we've got to engage with. The other bit around the training, I get. Well, one thing I think is quite interesting, when when we started using Google Maps, for example, we wanted to drill in and understand where that decision making was coming from, and you'd have that element there to understand and drill into. Yes, you set a whole lot of settings for that, whereas now we are using Google Maps. You drop into it. You don't really care why it's made the decision that it's made. You don't care about the route. You just assume that the route it's given is right. And that's why I think, in many ways, we will get to a point where we don't really worry about why the decisions were made. We'll just understand that they were made. We'll get to a level of trust, but we're gonna be on a journey there. I think the Martin Third dropped in a point here in the in on the stream that he's listening through, where he said that the AI will be underpinned by algorithms written by people. The benefit, as he sees it, is the outcome will be consistent and acceptable at a societal level, even if it's different from individual's choice. And that goes back into the organizational things that we were talking about earlier, which is, yeah, that's almost it's democratic decision making. That everybody would, if everybody's bought into it. But this then leads itself into what you were just been talking about, is as long as people understand how that decision making was made, which you can argue we might struggle with, because people don't actually know how decisions are made on our behalf at the moment anyway,
Mhm.
even before AI, with the way that government is. So Yeah, no, I think that's very. Yeah, it's going to be fundamental, isn't it, to being able to exploit it?
Yeah. So piece to that puzzle too. So imagine if we talked about sort of incorporating AI into a government or into a society. If they also sort of voted on not only whether or not to have an AI ethical decisions, but also what decisions that AI could make. This is kind of getting at that underpinning of AI by people, right? So if you vote like, okay, should AI be allowed to vote whether or not, or I guess the method and way in which an AI would triage in a healthcare setting, right? Are we voting on but then how do you get to that of all the nuance of, it's not just a simple decision. There's a lot of information that goes into that. Do you have sort of healthcare professionals then that lobby for one versus the other, or do you have, the society kind of representing what the best decision would be from their perspective? It's a whole interesting twist on sort of this AI, right? Like I'm thinking like piecemeal AI, where you just plug in pieces to this AI system that ultimately makes all the ethical decisions for you. And I don't know. It's fascinating. I think we could go into some of the separate industries or sectors to kind of talk about, what some of these decisions could be. I don't know. Do you want to do that?
Yeah, I mean, an easy one for me to pick up would be the whole defense bit, because I mean, it happens kind of all the time already that a decision needs to be made about I guess what people would lovingly call kinetic effect, i.e., who lives and who dies in this type of thing. And at the moment, we have very strong policy decisions there that is a human decision. That is something that somebody has to take responsibility for. But is there something there about from an AI perspective? We can make better quality decisions. But again, what happens when it goes wrong? And it goes back to that sort of that blame piece. I think fundamentally, when we're talking about taking somebody's life, no matter how bad it is, there is a level of responsibility there that we, ethically, morally feel like that should not just rest in some sort of data stream. So, what about you? Have you got a particular one that you would pick up and highlight?
I mean, the healthcare example is really interesting because you have sort of this triage aspect, right, that we kind of mentioned a little earlier. You have sort of understanding who gets treated first, who gets seen first, based on not only factors like who's easily able to be treated or whose injuries are more severe, who's more likely to live, who's not, right? You have all this stuff. So that's one interesting application. Then you also have sort of making the difficult decisions, whether or not somebody's in a coma or in a vegetative state or anything like that, right? You have sort of these really tough decisions, or whether or not to even go forward with a surgery. You have AI kind of looking at all that stuff. But then you have, even on the other side of things, you have AI doing wonderful things. Care too. You have looking at scans and diagnostics of individuals who are diagnoses before healthcare professionals see them themselves. And so there's all these type ways I could integrate there, but talk about those tougher decisions, right? It's like, how do you sort of assign, because really we're talking about who lives, who dies, and you mentioned that in defense too, right? Like it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Who's responsible for that?
But I think there's, I guess, the subtle difference is that in the healthcare setting, the AI would make a decision based on the overall capability and capacity of the healthcare system. So yes, you might not, you might make a decision based on the resources available, based on the capacity and capability of the surgeons available or the nurses available. And so it's how can, I guess he must be making it, would be looking at it, right? How many people can we save, as opposed to, what, rather than focus on this one person, you might save two people and things like that, which it's the same, it is the same outcome, but for, I guess, from a very different perspective. Because the other one where we're talking about this as well, I guess, is in the criminal justice system.
Mhm.
So when we're looking at the use of AI, I've sat as a magistrate, as a judge, um, where you have to make decisions on people's guilt and innocence, and that is a very human thing, or there's very, in many ways, it's a very emotional thing to sit through, because you have to hear all the evidence, you have to weigh it all up, interpret whether you believe that person is telling the truth or not, and then come to a decision. And then that decision has consequences, because they either go to jail, or, well, it's in the UK, they go to jail, and in the US, you have slightly more extreme versions in certain areas. So it is that, could the AI make better, cleaner decisions in many ways if you take out all that emotion and just nail it on the facts? And then, that is that judge, jury, executioner piece again. And would it make decision making in the justice system quicker, because the facts are the facts are the facts, and actually
And
just,
and would it make it more just? That's the other question too, right? It's like
yeah.
you have sort of, yeah. I mean, I don't know. Criminal justice is really hard to talk about, especially when you think about sort of, a fair trial by your peers. And there's a lot of issues with criminal justice in general. And I mean, I wonder how much of those problems would be solved by AI. I don't know if many of them, because you have systems that are in place. But you think about all that stuff, and which roles does it actually play? Does it actually play sort of does it play the judge? Does it play the jury? Or does it play the executioner? And when we say executioner, I'm almost thinking about it, like having AI sort of step in and say, well, what is an appropriate punishment that would, sort of have the most likely impact for a successful recovery for this person. Right. So
Yeah.
like that's kind of what I'm thinking from that perspective. And I think from that perspective, it's probably a great application. But when you start, applying it to a jury, then I think you're maybe getting a little bit more dicey of sort of what society is comfortable.
Well, again, because you're absolutely right, the justice system is more about society, because it's society's rules. That's what the whole justice system is. It's about what is acceptable and what is not within the functions of society, and them social rules. Somebody breaks them social rules that have been codified, and then the judge is there to say, yes, you have definitely broken them rules. The jury is there um, to do that, and as you say, the executioner is there to extract some sort of recompense on that. A really interesting quote that, when I was doing my training at the time, was, justice is not about, theoretically, justice is not about rehabilitation. Justice is about extracting a penalty from the person who has broken the law, for the victims, on behalf of the victim. Sorry, and I think, yeah, it's interesting that actually, out a lot of this, we do forget the victim's role in it all. And what would this provide better outcomes for a victim? I don't know. I don't know whether it would.
Yeah, no,
I
that's a great point, right? Because maybe there's some system in place that would not only be better for the the recovery, but also isn't an appropriate sort of punishment that would be satisfactory to the victim as well, right? Good
Yeah.
point. I do want to talk a little bit about surface transportation, because that's kind of what they're talking about here. They're talking about sort of the trolley problem, and when you think about the example in in the experiment that they ran, right? You're looking at the classic trolley problem, and I do want to talk about sort of autonomous vehicles, and I think this is one place in which sort of we're already looking at this issue. And I think that's why the researchers chose to focus here on this area, because this is already out there. We have AI systems, and whether or not they're making the correct choices, they are making decisions now that are impacting. Yeah, how do we just build responsible systems, all that stuff? I don't know. I just bring that up because it's happening now. One of those things where we need to figure it out quickly.
Well, and I think this is, again, it's a really good study from this perspective, because we've never had, that I can think of, such a rapid deployment of technology that is properly groundbreaking, game changing, but potentially lethal in all at once. And it's hit. We've talked about AI and being able to do different things, and I think we've all had this idea that we know that aircraft are being flown by autopilots, and they could have a varying levels of autonomy in there, and artificial intelligence making decisions. That's fine, because they're up in the air, they don't affect us on a day-to-day basis. Trains could be similar, so things that are very highly controlled, having that AI. The thing that has made a distinct difference is being able to get a piece of AI doing stuff for you in your hands. And this is where we sort of hit this with, people can drive around utilizing AI. We need to deal with this right now. And are we happy with our road space being used as largely an agile test bed? Because that's what it is at the moment. We've got AI doing its thing, and it's making mistakes. Not many when you compare to the other accidents that go on in the grand scheme of things, but they are still being made. And this, I think, that's possibly what makes people feel more uncomfortable than anything else.
Yeah, let's throw a couple ethical thought experiments out here, just to see kind of how we might think about AI in society and culture, and how it might approach some of these issues. Right. So we talked about the trolley problem. That's pretty ubiquitous, right? So let's look at the experience machine. Have you heard about this one, Barry? The experience machine.
No, go for it.
So there's a book, Anarchy, State, and Utopia. And basically we're looking at an ethical system that places pleasure above all other values. So the concept here is that there's a machine that could give you whatever experience you wanted at any moment. And I guess the first question is, would you plug into a machine like this? Would everyone do it? If everyone was plugged in, who would run it? Those types of questions, right? And so this whole concept of wanting to plug into the experience machine, I think this is a little bit more fun to think about, because I don't know, I'd plug into it, but then would it become addicting? I don't know, probably. I could have every podcast episode where my internet doesn't suck, and that's the experience I'm living. But I don't know. Would you plug into something like this, and then how would an AI system sort of work with this in society? Right, this is theoretical, but
yeah. Would I plug in? See, my gut answer is, yeah, of course you would, because why wouldn't you want to experiment that sort of thing? But then how do you, it's almost that addictive thing. How do you know that you will be able to then unplug? Because I think all the idea of pleasure is only pleasurable because it doesn't happen all the time. You can't have unlimited pleasure all the time, or maybe I'm just doing things wrong. I don't know. But you know what I mean? There's I think there's a whole thing where you have the whole yin and yang, pleasure pain thing, because you recognize the good stuff because the bad stuff. If you have nothing but the good stuff, then it dulls out. So I don't know. Interesting. I'd like to go there.
Here's a better example. What about the utility monster? So basically, when we talk about a monster here, we're talking about AI, right? And so this experiment, this thought experiment, really considers maximizing pleasure, happiness, or good as the highest moral goal. And they are sort of set at the core of this AI's thought process, right? So we're looking at we're looking at the AI's ability to focus on the consequences of actions, and the AI would be set for maximizing utility towards good in the world, right? And so basically we're imagining an AI that gets 100 times more good out of things than being a human ever could, right? So or letting humans make these decisions than they ever could, right? So for example, a human eats a chocolate chip cookie. Would it taste 100 times better to you if this is a bad example. I'm trying to adapt it from another thing, but here, think about sort of like, if you made a choice that was selfish to you, but it was maybe not so good for others in the world, would an AI step in and correct your action to sort of make sure that there's more good in the world based on your decision? Is it really a decision at that point, right? It's a interesting thought experiment.
Yes, it's the does the group exist only because the actions of the individuals, or does the group exist because the actions of the group and solely for the good for the group? Yes. The problem with thought experiments is they make you think.
Yeah.
Which is a bit of that. I mean, I actually on that I'm a great believer in that the groups are made up of people, so without people making individual decisions, you don't get a group. But you clearly do, because we've seen so many examples of how that so doesn't work. We're like just right through COVID. You've seen the examples of groups of people doing crazy things, yet everybody individually said, "Oh, why would you do that?" Initially we went through a whole piece of things happening where you couldn't buy like toilet paper and stuff because people were bulk buying stuff because they could, because they thought everything was going to go. So if everybody just left it alone, it would have been fine. But no, we act together as a group, like sheep, if you will. And Nick seems to have frozen on his side, so I'm just going to carry on without him, because who needs him anyway? He's back. Darn it.
I'm back. Maybe.
Yeah.
You hear me okay?
Yeah. No, you're good.
All right. Yeah. All right. So at this point, I think we'll let's see. Where were we at, Barry? Did you finish your thought?
Yeah, I finished my thought. Basically, I was relaying the fact that we were we behaved like sheep through the pandemic when we were crash buying loads and loads of stuff.
Yeah. All right. Any other loose rounds on this article before we go ahead and get into our little break?
No, I think it's a really interesting one. I like this one because it's made me think a lot more than I anticipated it would make me think. Because normally we've been around these sort of AI discussions for quite a while, but then sometimes you just get a topic that makes you think of things in a slightly different twist, different way. So, well done for everybody who voted it in to be the story this evening.
Yeah.
What about you, Nick?
Yeah. No other closing thoughts from me. Thank you to our patrons this week for selecting our topic, and thank you to our friends over at Hiroshima University for our news story this week. If you want to follow along, we do post the links to the original articles on our weekly roundups on our blog. You can also join us on our Discord for more discussion on these stories. We're going to take a quick break. I'm going to reset my router, and then we'll be back to see what's going on in the Human Factors community right after this.
Human Factors Cast brings you the best in human factors news, interviews, conference coverage, and overall fun conversations into each and every episode we produce. But we can't do it without you. The Human Factors Cast network is 100% listener supported. All the funds that go into running the show come from our listeners. Our patrons are our priority, and we want to ensure we're giving back to you for supporting us. Pledges start at just $1 per month and include rewards like access to our weekly Q&As with the hosts, personalized professional reviews, and Human Factors Minute, a Patreon-only weekly podcast where the hosts break down unique, obscure, and interesting human factors topics in just 1 minute. Patreon rewards are always evolving, so stop by patreon.com/humanfactorscast to see what support level may be right for you. Thank you, and remember, it depends.
And welcome back. So to take you a little bit behind the scenes at the moment, obviously through that first session of the through the podcast, Nick's audio was less than useful. He has been taking a local copy of that, and he's now disappeared into the land of presumably wherever he stores his router, and he's rebooting his router. So you get to put it with me for a short period of time whilst he goes and does his whole reset. If it's anything like me, then you're going to have to work out exactly how you're going to get to it, because I don't go and find my router very often, and then have to do the whole drop it down and bring it all back up again. What would be really interesting from my perspective, though, is given hopefully you were able to hear most of that story and most of our thoughts on it, is for you to give me some feedback on your thoughts. Obviously, Martin's already given some of his opinions there as well, but there's more of you out there who are have your thoughts on whether you would allow AI to make these sort of decisions, any sort of decisions for you. And I guess these are the ethical decisions, the ones that have consequences, the ones that have some sort of output that you may not like, because I think that's been the highlight of particularly the ones around healthcare, the ones around defense, the ones around forensics, and that's why this trolley problem comes in around around the transportation, because that is something that we have to make a decision about whether it can happen, because fundamentally something bad happens out of this for somebody, because decisions, we can't, not everybody can be saved, not in the healthcare domain, not everybody gets to live in that defense domain, and in that justice element there is a victim, but there is somebody who's guilty there. So I'd be really interested in getting your feedback. So put it in the comments, put it in the wherever you're listening or watching, and we can play with that. However, Nick's back now.
Yeah, I'm gonna do another quick. This is why you come to the live show, everyone. This is because you go to NASCAR for the crashes. You come to the live show for my internet crashes. Hopefully, we'll be okay now. Anyway, I'm gonna just play this for a second. It's the same thing. It's just so that way we get a clean cut.
Yay!
Human Factors Cast brings you the best in.
Yes, huge thank you as always to our patrons. We especially want to thank our honorary Human Factors Cast staff patron, Michelle Tripp. Patrons like you keep the show running. You keep the lights on over here. What does Patreon actually pay for? Well, this month, like I said, if anyone wants to become a patron, 30% of your proceeds this month will go to the Trevor Project for Pride Month. But normally what it helps pay for here is kind of the monthly hosting fees that we usually use to keep our podcast up. That costs money. I don't know if you know that. It costs money. It's not free. You can't just put a podcast out there. You got to pay for it. Anyway, it does that. We have annual website domain fees that we got to take care of. We have and we got to pay for that somehow. We have automation in the scenes, handling a lot of stuff, and products and services to help us with the audio and video production, and above all, it helps with my ability to get. Not tonight. We'll see. Anyway, yeah, it pays the bills. It keeps the lights on. Thank you. Appreciate the support. Let's get into this next part of the show.
It came from.
That's right. This is the part of the show we like to call It Came From. This is where we search all over the internet to bring you topics the community is talking about. Any topic is fair game for us to sit here and talk about, as long as it relates to the field of human factors. And wherever you're watching, if you find these answers useful, give us a like to help other people find this content. All right, we got 3 tonight. This first one here is by Mystery to Me, a UX research subreddit. How to deal with know-it-alls. They go on to write, I'm new to a team where a few of us were hired at the same time. One of them, a male, former engineer, seems to dominate all meetings with his input on how to change processes or random things in the organization. As a new employee, I really wouldn't have the confidence to come across that way, trying to change things. They've been that way forever, since I feel like it comes off as I know better than everyone else. I'm really just trying to learn in this first month on my job. He also often brings up his past experience during meetings, I feel like it sidetracks us a lot. The manager doesn't really do a good job of keeping the meeting focused, so it ends up going for an hour with him mansplaining on how to do things or how things should be done. Try to be more vocal in the meetings, but he seems just to interject again right away. How do you deal with this behavior? I'm also wondering if this type of behavior is actually rewarded over my approach of keeping quiet until I learn more, or should I try to be more vocal too? And how would one do that without coming across as arrogant? Barry, what are your thoughts on this? How do you how do you approach that situation?
Oh, it's difficult, and because some people do this as a defensive behavior. So particularly with new people coming into organizations, they and I think probably it is probably more of a male issue than a female issue, where you feel like you have to go and prove your worth as soon as you possibly can. So you end up either being quiet, or you end up talking an awful lot and basically trying to justify your existence. Um, my approach to this, because I've seen it quite a lot, unfortunately, one way or another, is if you see how many, have a quiet word with people, and sort of just help them reflect on themselves about what it is that they're doing. Um, because the other killer part of this really is that actually quite often this type of behavior can end up going quite well rewarded, because there seem to be more um if managers, particularly if there may be managers who don't necessarily are not all over the brief, and they're literally just managers, people managers, not technical managers. If they don't really know what's going on, then they think, oh well, actually this person's been really vocal. Clearly, then they know what they're talking about. When we all know that that isn't necessarily the case. If you haven't got a manager who is good at basically getting everybody to put forward their point of view and that type of thing, we can suffer with this. So really, it's a difficult thing to do, but I would suggest a cup of tea, cup of coffee, have a chat with them, and somehow it's not an easy thing to do. I don't have a playbook of being able to go and start that conversation, but it is most people, when you point out that behavior to them, do tend to be a bit more reflective, particularly in our domain. Um, but I've seen this sometimes before, and yes, it's not an easy thing to deal with, because you feel like you're being, particularly if you've been there a while, you feel like they're coming and stamping in on your ground. You feel like you're being let down, particularly if the managers aren't supporting you in that way. So I feel for you, Nick. What about you? Have you had to deal with this before?
Oh, certainly. Yeah, this is a tough one. Because for me, as a new employee, I'm typically the quiet one, and so I'm very much in like information absorption mode, and so I don't feel comfortable talking about things I don't understand. The exception is asking for question or asking questions about those things that I don't understand. Now, I will say, you're right, Barry. This behavior oddly does go rewarded in some cases where you do have sort of the manager that is looking at the the ability to contribute to a conversation rather than the content of that contribution. And so in this case, what I would recommend for somebody in this situation is to go to that manager and say, hey, look, I don't think that this person is contributing anything meaningful. And I feel like a lot of our conversations go off topic. And you don't even have to bring up the person. Just say, hey, I think, our conversations could be a little bit more guided, and I have concerns about the direction in which some of these, conversations get off the rails. That might, subtly nudge them to, sort of rein in the conversation as it does get off the rails with people like this. I don't know. That's kind of where I'd start. If it ultimately becomes a huge problem, obviously call them out by name and tell the manager so and so is doing this. And then from there, you might want to call it out in the meeting to just say, hey, can we table this discussion and get back to the thing at hand? People tend to be pretty receptive when you call it out in the middle of a meeting.
Mm.
But I would go the other options first. Any other closing thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I guess part of it is actually I've probably been half of this person. Just so I've certainly had them elements where I've gone into a new role, felt completely out of my depth, and you do feel like you have to do some of that. But this was like really, really early on in my career, and I did have somebody pull me aside and say, you are worth it. You are fine. You don't need to shout your mouth off all the time. And that really early on was actually quite a good learning experience. I like to think I wasn't going quite as far as what this story was alluding to, but sometimes maybe you don't necessarily understand everything what's going on inside that person. I think so. I think there's probably possibly two levels there to think on as well.
I love that person told you don't have to run your mouth, and yet you are a regular on this podcast and you have your own. Anyway,
Yeah, I didn't tell it.
Just a little observation. All right, this next one here is filled with some fun language, but I'm gonna censor most of it. Horrible UX interview experience. This is by Wishing for Nuggets on the user experience subreddit. I had a bad interview with a senior UX designer at a company. Geez, how do I truncate this? Apparently, he's an engineering grad that makes films in his free time, which is great. Except he himself has just a year's experience in UX, which I found out after the interview by stalking him. And after that experience, and that experience also includes a course from Udemy, UX Fundamentals. I don't know. It seems ridiculous that I'm being interviewed by someone who themselves is starting out in UX. Not to mention the condescending tone. I was talking about inclusive design, and he cuts in and tells me that's great, but it's not relevant to UX at all. Wondering where to put you since your UX is very quote unquote basic. That's what he said after looking at my case study and portfolio. They advertise this as a UX and UI design role, but the guy says, no, we're looking for a UX researcher, which is very different. He's asking me stuff like, do you know what an artboard resolution is? I'm genuinely questioning because I have 4 years of visual design experience. Anyway, is this normal? Am I missing something? Or I'm genuinely so annoyed and upset right now. I have picked this because this post made me annoyed and upset. Barry, how do you go about an interview where it might not be going in your favor or your way or anything like that?
It's this is, again, this isn't easy because I've been there a few times where you turn up thinking you're going for a job. It's been advertised as a certain job, and it isn't. You sort of get there and they're like, actually, no, we're really looking for this. And then you immediately get into that thing. Oh, have I made a mistake here? Or somebody told me wrong? And then you realize, I mean, I guess we see it in human factors quite a lot, in that you get interviewed by somebody because you're if you go into a role where possibly you're the only HF person in there, you've been managed, you've been done by a senior person, you've been interviewed by a senior person who's heard of human factors and has maybe done some sort of cool course once in was a long time ago, but knows all about it when they probably don't. It's not easy, but also it is kind of incumbent on you to realize that the interview process is a two-way process. That if what they're giving you is such bad vibes, then you probably don't belong there. That's your evaluation of it is, if it gives you such a horrible experience, move on, find another one. I think there is maybe an expectation that every interview that we go to should be perfectly aligned to us, and it should be everything on the other side of the table should be absolutely perfect thrown our way. And that's just not the case. And it might be that people are interviewing because they don't really know what they're talking about there. Or they might think that, as what sounds in this case, that they've got a bit of an inkling of knowledge. And because of company politics, they're in a position that they have some power of a hiring and stuff. Yeah, they might be coming out with stuff that you think is not right. But quite frankly, I'm in that kind of suck it up and move on. Find the job that is right for you. Find something that you really want to go with. You owe them nothing. Go and find the next bit. I think that you might have something slightly different to say, Nick. Oh, we can't actually hear you now. You've put yourself on mute or something.
I did the mute thing. You'd think.
This is not a Zoom meeting.
No. Okay. Let's break it down. You have good interviews. You have bad interviews. This post made me angry, not at the interviewer. I look like I don't know. The thing that I want people to take away from interviews is to learn from them. In this situation, this person has clearly had a bad interview from their perspective. They have been interviewed by someone that they think is not qualified. You also don't know their full story. You've stalked them on the internet to find out what their sort of experience in UX was versus understanding, what their job roles were and past, past work experience. I don't know. To me, it just seems like a little pretentious. The point here is that if you do have one of those interviews where maybe there wasn't a communication about what exactly that role was, in this case, they were looking for a designer role, but the company hiring was looking for a researcher role. And so, is that something that you ask as a clarifying question before the interview actually starts? That's, a learning experience there. That's a question that you can ask in the organizing state. And then, I think there's ways to handle it in the moment too. If you're asked a question or if somebody's combative with a a statement that you made, that's another way in which you can evaluate the people that you're going to be working with, right? You said it's a two-way street. It is. You're evaluating the people that you're going to be working with. And if somebody's, combative against something that you're saying, or maybe it's you, maybe you're not listening to what they're saying. I don't know. I just think there's something that you can learn from this. And, if that thing is that there are some good interviews and some bad interviews, and that's the thing that you learn, it's the thing that you learn. I don't know that it's not rocket science, I guess. Any other thoughts on that one, Barry?
Well, get over yourself.
All right.
Thank you. No, not you. Obviously.
No. I know. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Nick,
all right. Last one up here tonight is search engine optimization user research. This is by Rejuvenates on the user experience subreddit. I did a redesign for a website. SEO research was involved. I looked at competitors in the area and keywords, ways to improve the homepage experience. I also looked at reviews. How do I display this information on my portfolio next to my design? So is search engine optimization user research, Barry? If so, why is it? And then also, how do you, this is a separate question. How do you sort of put that work experience that might not have direct interaction with users, but still benefits them into portfolios?
So I think it is user research because it's all about how you're, fundamentally to be able to use a website effectively, people are going to get there in the first place, right? And so I do, and have done for a long time, counted it as one of the fundamental, a pre-step and a post-step when we do this type of work. How do you put it as part of your portfolio? That's a slightly different question, and it's more of a narrative view. It's about how you implement the process, why you implemented the process, because fundamentally, you're trying to put yourself into that, into your user's mindset before they even get onto your onto the site that you're designing. So it's about context. It goes into some of them intangibles. I wouldn't be able to comment, I don't think, about how to put it into that portfolio piece, because from that perspective, I've never done it. I've always, we do it as part of reporting, we do it as part of that piece. So I wouldn't how to showcase it in the best way to show that you could do it. I would be struggling with. Nick, what do you think?
Yes, search engine optimization is user research. It's understanding what terms, what sort of things are going to be most relevant to people before they even get to the place, like you said, right? It's kind of understanding the user before you even get there. Yep. And really, it's your best approximation of sort of what that user needs to get to that thing that you're working on, right? And so if you're looking at competitors, I just also along the same lines, I'd look at competitive analysis as user research. You are looking at other tools, industry standards that are out there, doing similar things to you that, obviously users of those platforms might have thoughts and feelings about too. And you can find, user research everywhere. I think there's, a lot of different places in which you can find user research that a lot of people don't think about, right? Like, I don't know if you're making a product like Google Sheets and you go and research an Excel form, you're going to get a lot of the same stuff. Like that's, competitive analysis is totally user research. So when you look at other products and what SEO they're using, totally. Now, when you're looking at things like reviews, also same thing. You're looking at what are some of the key terms that they're using? What are some of the their thoughts around the product. Don't know. There's not too much information here, but in terms of displaying on a portfolio, now this is a little bit tricky from, like a research perspective or human factors perspective. A lot of times we do job talks in which we talk about a process. You mentioned narrative. It totally is. With a designer, it's a little bit trickier, but I think, throw together a graphic of all the things that went into the search engine optimization. That might be a good place to start, and you can talk through it during your interview. So I don't know, ultimately, if you came up with a design from search engine optimization, or, if they somehow played into each other, I think that might be a good way to go. Put it right next to it. I don't know. Any other closing thoughts on that one?
No, I think, as you quite rightly say, visualize your process and show how things feed in. That's probably the best, certainly in terms of that display bit, will be the way I would do it from that point.
Yeah. All right. Let's get into this last part of the show we like to call One More Thing. It's where Barry and I just sit here and talk about one more thing. Barry, what's your one more thing this week?
Well, I'm going to go with one more thing because that's what it's called. It's not called two or three things. I spoke a while ago about the fact that I'm getting an EV, and this was like months ago now. But apparently it's coming next month, and I'm very excited. So excited! I had the car charger installed today.
Ooh.
And so it's now like it's a thing pointing out to the wall on the side of my house, just teasing me, waiting for the car to turn up. So it feels like we're making progress. So I've got about a month to go, and then I don't know, we can maybe go on a guided tour of my new car when as a live experiment or something. When
that'd be fun. Yeah,
if we could do a live sort of test of live usability review on like the world. How scary would that be?
That'd be great. I love it. Contrary to popular belief, I am also going to do just one more thing here. I do have a fun story, though. If you are listening and if you want to watch something funny, go watch our pre-show, because I talk about a color scheme thing. It's funny. You should go watch it. Anyway, I have something I'd like to talk about today, and it is a chair related thing. So I don't know. People who watch the show, again, another visual thing, but people who watch the show might notice I'm a couple inches taller today because I have fixed my chair. Now, my chair before had an issue with the gas piston that lifted and lowered. It actually broke off the weld underneath the chair, and so my chair was wobbling from side to side. And so as I was sitting here podcasting with you, Barry, I'd be like, trying to stabilize myself with just my legs and arms, and it was bad. And it was like that for weeks. And ultimately I ended up bungee cording my chair together so that way it wobbled less. Still wobbled. Anyway, didn't realize that this might be completely obvious to some of you, but chair replacement parts are a thing that you can buy. So
yes.
I bought replacement parts for the underpiece and made it heavy duty, so that way it will support my heavy booty. And then I also got a piston, and the first piston I got was way too tall. In fact, I was sitting probably, if you're looking at the screen right now, I'm in the middle of the screen. It was probably putting my head up here.
Nice.
My knees were at my keyboard at the lowest setting. It was really bad. So I had to order a replacement part, and I had got these fun wheels that are like rollerblade wheels for the chair. I don't know if I have them. I think I have them. And they're like rollerblade wheels for your chair, but these added height to it as well. And so even with the new piston, the shortest piston I can find, and those wheels, I was still looking at my thighs kind of pushing up my keyboard. And so ultimately I had to make my chair stationary by removing the wheels, putting in those little tiny stops, so that way it, all that stuff. Anyway, that's my one more thing this week. I'm happy to have a working chair. That's it. And that's it for today, everyone. If you like this episode and want to hear Barry and I talk about our AI girlfriends, since we're talking about AI, I'll encourage you to go listen to episode 240, where we talk about how AI might be able to provide companionship for others. Comment wherever you're listening with what you think of the story this week. For more in-depth discussion, you can join us on our Discord community. You can always visit our official website, sign up for our newsletter, stay up to date with all the latest Human Factors news. If you like what you hear, you want to support the show, you can leave us a 5-star review. That is free for you to do. You can tell your friends about us. That's also free for you to do, and really helps us grow. And if you want to, consider supporting us on Patreon. Again, 30% of our proceeds this month are going to the Trevor Project. And as always, links to all of our socials on our can be found on our website and are in the description of this episode. Mr. Barry Kirby, thank you for being on the show today. Where can our listeners go and find you if they want to talk about the trolley problem?
If you want to talk about that, you can find me on Twitter and other socials at Baz_K, or come and listen to some of my interviews at 1202 Human Factors Podcast at 1202podcast.com.
As for me, I've been your host, Nick Roome. You can find me on Discord and across social media at Nick_Roome. Thanks again for tuning into Human Factors Cast. Until next time,
It
depends. Okay, post show. Wow.
Whoa.
Internet. How bad was it?
You were sort of at some points you were really quite chopping out. So when I wrote, I was like, because there was a bit of flake, but it would come in like sort of waves. It was really weird. I've never seen it like that. Normally you're either bad or you're not, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
This kept on dipping in and out.
That sucks.
Yeah.
I'll do my best with the audio. That just means I have a long night ahead of me.
Well, at least you got local backup. That's
kind of. I started it as soon as you said it, so I'll have that much. I think once I restarted the router, it was fine, but yeah.
But no, to be honest, when he said it sort of did it a bit. I mean, it was better, but it still wasn't perfect. So anyway, which out of all the things that we thought were going to go wrong, given the late and everything, I didn't think that was going to be it.
Yeah. I hate it. It's so dumb. It's like there's nothing I can do about it other than reset my router and like.
Well, even that, I don't know whether that's actually. How much is that? Considering what how much stress you're going through with your ISP, I'm surprised that they haven't been able to do more. But there you go. What I have liked tonight was the amount of interaction we had.
Yeah, that was great.
So
thank you, Martin. That was great.
Yeah, no, it's in fact one of the comments he picked up on and I didn't when he mentioned it was around that
interview.
The interview about saying about if the interview doesn't know the technical detail of your discipline, there could be massive opportunity. Now, that's something I didn't pick up on. I was too busy rolling my eyes at the person going, "You need to get over yourself."
Same.
So,
no, that's a great point. I mean, if they do sort of have that lack of awareness, you can bring that to the table.
Yeah, like it could be a bit of a strength, kind of.
Mm-hmm. Oh, geez, I don't even know. I'll just call this as like local 248 local. Gotta save this file. This is gonna be an editing nightmare. Not looking forward to it.
I'm pleased that you do production and I don't.
Yeah.
That's a way of getting flipped shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
I nearly said that my that the car charger on my wall was way more phallic, and I thought we were possibly hitting the boundaries of good things to have on the actual recording itself. So,
I mean, how phallic are we talking?
Well, it's properly horizontal. It's properly erect.
What is the brand? Can I
It is Ohme, OHME, I think it is. Where's I get that? It's an Ohme Pro, OHME Pro charger. And you need to see the it's got a
maybe am I just looking at the normal version? It doesn't look at all to me like. Oh, are you talking about the actual charging
the hand
wand? The wand.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I see. All right. I see ya. I see ya. Okay.
But in fact, I need to go back to the people because I think they've only sent me a 5-meter cable, and I'm fairly sure I ordered an 8-meter cable.
I feel like if I show this, I feel like I need to blur it out.
But that's now just sticking out of my wall in a random manner. But
yeah, that is a that is certainly a charger cable.
But hopefully we'll think about this whilst I'm. Yes, no, I knew I was right. I will have to go and write to them and complain. Oh, that's annoying. Oh, just kidding.
Yeah,
So
sorry.
I'd ordered it with an 8-meter cable, knowing that it needed to go around places. Like I wasn't entirely sure where I was going to be able to charge it and all that sort of stuff because I'm getting the Mustang, then the charging port is nearer the front, and so I wanted something that was going to be all around that. And so I deliberately ordered the 8-meter version, and they've sent me the 5-meter version. But I ordered that in March, and I've only just unpacked it now, and so they might just turn around and say, "Tough, that's way too late." I might just have to suck it up, and it's now on the wall. It's now installed. So, that's irritating. I wonder actually.
Oh man,
how much difference does it make? 563. Like £100 difference. Anyway, right. So that's tomorrow's problem. I get to write some shirty emails.
Yeah. I'm trying to find an online pixelator that allows you to focus an area instead of the whole thing.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah, a part. Let's see. Maybe this might. Yeah, I think this might actually help. Here, let's try this one, and we'll do. Now you just have to wait till it's fun.
Oh well, this is what the post show's for. This is where I unwind and think about all the work I need to do to fix that stupid. Yeah, there we go. That might be too much. Hang on. Let's not leave everything to the imagination. Let's give a little silhouette there. Hang on. Okay. Yeah, I think that'll. Huh?
Yes. You have too much time in your hands.
No, I this is the post show, dude. I'm good. I'm good. Let me put it that way. Here, let's this is the post show, so I'm okay with showing this. Let's see. Just can't show anything during the main show, otherwise it doesn't translate well to or it's just a lot of work for me. Ultimately, that's I'm stopping myself from working. All right, so here's the thing. And by thing I mean the EV charger.
Yes.
That's it. Barry can confirm. Here, let's put us down here in this corner here. I don't care. The Pride logo's over my face. Yeah. So we're looking. This is the piece there then that Barry's talking about.
See the bracket up to the above right. So where it's all around that, it fits in there.
It fits in there. So this is the best picture that I could find with the shape, because some of them, it's like taken from head on, so you can see.
Yeah.
Sort of, but
I think it does come out of the wall in a very very rich nature.
Yes, it does, and I think what we'll do here. Hang on, just for comparison's sake, I'm gonna take that away. We're back. We're gonna do one more fun. We're gonna do one more fun, just to show it plugged in, because I think there's there's value in showing that as well. And we will do that. And then, yeah, we can do that. Okay, so then, yeah, so we have, oh, hold on. I am figuring out Windows is what I'm doing. All right, there we go. All right, so here we go. One more try here. Let's go ahead and share the screen one more time. There you go. So on the right there is the new picture.
Yes.
also blurred out. You can clearly see it sticking out of the wall there.
Yes. Then the other annoyance with this now that I sort of found out is one of the original reasons for choosing this charger is it's a smart charger, and if you think right back, the first car I was going to get was actually a Kia EV6, and this would plug into that and have an API. It has an API, so actually the charger recognizes the car and goes, this is how far you're charged, and this is, so it would actually communicate with the car and be able to intelligently charge. I then found out today that actually Ford, because I'm getting this Mustang, doesn't have the API released to these guys yet, and therefore it's going to be not as clever as it could be, which is
that's a bummer.
A little bit sad. I mean, it's still a good charger and all that sort of stuff.
I mean, it still looks great, if you know what I mean.
Yes. So now we just want the car to go with it, though, and that's what I'm most excited about. Because especially with the price of fuel being what it is, I want that to be electric power, not messing around with this. There we go. Life, I guess. Now every time I walk out past it, it's just going to tease me until the new car comes. And also, what a lot of people are mocking me about as well is because I've never actually sat in this car yet. So I haven't actually test driven this car yet. I'm spending quite a lot of money on it. So that rocks as well. You've died again, haven't you? Yeah, thought so. You just can't get the stuff, I tell you. It'll be interesting to see if he actually comes back. Oh, there we go. Dude, you died again.
Are you?
Yeah, I'm here. Hello.
All right. Maybe. So here's the thing. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. I think we're gonna stop just a little early tonight because
makes sense.
My problems have become worse now. And I don't think it's worth the time or effort to get upset over it.
Yeah.
And we'll thank you all for joining us, and we'll be hopefully with every week lesson.
Rock solid connections.
Rock solid connection. That should be an internet server.
All right then, buddy. Well, have yourself a good rest of the day, and I shall chat to you next week.
All right. Tomorrow, bye, everybody. Bye. Have a great night.
Bye.
Bye.